What do you consider the most important benefits, risks and governance challenges of clinical research that involves germline genome editing?
I think we're very fortunate in the UK to have a comprehensive and mature regulatory framework that governs embryo research and the creation and use of human embryos for research purposes. And the breadth and robustness of that regulatory framework means that whereas in other countries there have been calls for germline gene editing to be prohibited or for there to be a moratorium, we can license and permit germline gene editing research in the UK because it's subject to a tight regulatory framework and licensing framework. So parliamentarians and the media and the public know and are reassured that the research is being conducted in a supervised, monitored, regulated environment, and that before a license is granted, it's subject to ethical scrutiny and peer review by experts in the field. That at the same time comes with its own challenges because regulation needs to be efficient and proportionate and expert in the way that it's implemented. But we do have this very mature body of regulation that I think gives researchers a solid platform on which to proceed with their research. It provides a buffer, if you like, for researchers when they're conducting controversial research, such as germline gene editing research in embryos, in that the decision as to whether or not that research should proceed is made by an independent regulatory body. And so the scrutiny of that decision-making process is of the regulator rather than of the individual researcher. And so we have an environment in the UK where I think embryo research and germline gene editing research can flourish. And the UK has a long-standing tradition of excellent progressive research in this area, which is at least in part due to this regulatory environment which facilitates that sort of research.
What problems do you expect to emerge from global differences in regulatory rules and regulatory cultures in this technology field?
We love to regulate in the UK, and we regulate most aspects of society, and particularly areas of healthcare and controversial areas such as embryo research and the development and use of new therapies. There are other countries, though, that have either more relaxed regulatory environments or no regulation in relation to new therapies or the use of stem cell therapies or new technologies using human embryos. And history has shown that certain jurisdictions have been willing to either tolerate or perhaps turn a blind eye to irresponsible therapeutic applications, particularly in relation to stem cell therapies that have been offered without any proven evidence base for their human use. And that does create a very real tension between a country such as the UK, which has adopted a tight regulatory framework, a facilitative regulatory framework, but a tight framework, and those countries where no such regulation exists. And we cannot prevent patients travelling abroad to seek treatment that's not available in the UK, even if there are very good reasons why it's not available here. All we can seek to do, I think, is to provide information to prospective patients who are seeking treatment as to the risks of unproven therapies and the dangers to them or to their prospective children of not taking part in studies which involve follow-up and monitoring, so that their children will be monitored to ensure the safety of this procedure as it goes ahead. So public awareness, I think, is key to ensuring that tension between the regulated and the unregulated environments is addressed. The other issue, I think, is that where there is a consensus within the responsible countries such as the US and the UK as we have with germline gene editing research, there are representative bodies and organizations which can publicize that consensus so that any clinic or doctor or scientist that operates outside those agreed standards and principles is recognized and identified as being irresponsible and therefore becomes a pariah. And that, I think, is also a very powerful tool in highlighting responsible and irresponsible research and therapy. I'm more sceptical about international regulation and treaties and their impacts and effect because, as I've mentioned, there are those who are willing to pursue commercial gain over the responsible practice of medicine. And there is a limit to what can effectively be done on a global scale to prevent that happening.